Well, good morning, everyone. This is Patrick at Qdabra Software, and I want to welcome you to our weekly webinar. Today I have Mel Clemente with us, and she's going to be helping me with my demo. Mel, can you say hello?
Hey everybody, how are you doing today?
Hey, how are you?
Good morning.
Yes, it is morning here in Seattle, but not where you're at, Mel. So today we are talking about performance. And before we get started, I actually have a quick poll for everyone, just to get people in the mood. Let me just launch the poll. This is a one question kind of deal. We really are looking at forms that are slow today and how to improve them. So let's ask everyone, how slow is your slowest form? And we see a lot of slow forms, so we're constantly improving performance here. But if you can give me just a quick response to this poll, we will tally the results. Really, the point of the poll is to prime you for what's coming in the webinar. And it looks like most of you are in the 10, 20 seconds for your slow form. Some of you actually don't have very many slow forms. You got 33% there, showing less than 5. So that's great. Thanks for answering that question. But we had 42% in the column C, a couple people in D. So we're trying to improve that today. Before we show you the techniques, and we've got quite a few demos, I just want to do a quick shout out to InfoPath 2016. That's right. We have created it at Qdabra. Not only did we work on InfoPath 2003 when we were at Microsoft, but we also built the latest and greatest version of InfoPath. And this is an app that you install in 2013 to essentially ensure the future of your forms. So you don't have to worry about Microsoft breaking things. And they do break things from time to time with because InfoPath has been deprecated, Microsoft's no longer maintaining it. You will see things work not so well as time goes on. They are supporting it until 2025, and they have fixed some of the issues that have come up over the years. But we do have a replacement for you. That's called InfoPath. I'm sorry, it's called Form 02 V2.1. We kind of have a code name InfoPath 2016, but it actually has a lot of stuff in it. And it is your migration path. We've got a lot of customers on it. We'd love to show you how to use it. It's very easy with existing forms. You just take your existing XSN and you install the Forms Your app, and it works side by side with InfoPath. You can use it as a replacement for InfoPath. You can use it to augment your current forms. It has faster performance. It has a whole bunch of new features, including the ability to use your forms with mobile devices. So there's a very nice, rich layout functionality in Forms here that you can access through rules. So it's very easy to do. We showed a webinar on this about a month ago. I think, Mel, you did it. I forget which date it was, but we talked about creating mobile forms to look good, and we used Forms here as that. And it's free. I mean, we do charge for high usage customers on the cloud, but if you're on-prem, there's no license fee. We do recommend a support package to help you get installed and all that, but you don't have to purchase that. So that's the quick ad. Okay, so on to the webinar today. So today we're making forms load more quickly. This is the most important part of the performance piece, because when your users open the form, you want to make sure it's a snappy experience. That the first impression, it counts, right? So the first time they open the form, if it loads in 3 to 5 seconds, you're good. That's really the best practice and the industry standard right now for cloud-based forms. And we're really talking about the browser today, but these techniques will also work in the filler. But the main target of this discussion is the browser. So first off, you could use Chrome, and we're going to show you the difference between Internet Explorer and Chrome. Chrome is Google's browser. It's very fast compared to IE. And you can also use Forms here. Forms here is much faster than IE. I'm sorry, than the InfoPath form services when you're displaying forms. Now, for our demos today, we're going to talk about 2 forms here. We've been working on a form for a customer. They're an education, they're a school district in Oregon, and this form, Mel, can you say a few things about this form? We're going to be demoing this form and showing you the performance techniques. But before we do that, I'd like to give you a little bit of context, some background on what this form actually does. And Mel, let me make you, well, why don't you just talk to it real quick?
Sure, yeah. They do have this like calendar where administrators or HR people are going into the form and entering their employee IDs. After entering the employee ID, and it will retrieve the employee information from a SharePoint list, and then the admin will fill out the calendar section of the form with how many hours that employee is going to basically plan the work for the entire fiscal year from July to June. And we are using another form, a config file or a config form is what we call it, to populate all the drop downs in the form instead of getting items from different SharePoint lists, and also to populate the calendar because we do have like 52 weeks in a year and 365 days in a year. But yeah, that's going to risk performance if you have that ton of data. So we're using a config file for that, and that's what we're going to show in today's webinar.
This is the config file. We'll make both of these forms available to you. This is, and we picked this form because we're working on it right now, but also because there were some performance issues with it, and we improved those significantly, and that's the goal for today, is to show you what we did. I wanted to actually, Mel, just quickly open the form and show them what it looks like. I should pick this one, the final version, right? The DCs with config, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm just going to open this, and I'm going to type in, just to give people an idea of this form in the browser, what it looks like. It's a nice looking form. And what should I type in here, Mel? It should be like AC.
10483.
Is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So this is going to load Mel's information, and then we would set, let's assume that she's a teacher. What's the next thing I do? I just select her.
Yeah, I created a separate button to get the config so that it won't load on form open. So then we select 190.
190, okay. So she's working 190 days this year, and then we're going to, and then she's got her calendar here. And we're going to talk about these different paging and these other different things. We can see here that we've got a calendar of her work days. And so the NC stands for non-contract day off, I believe. That's like vacation, I think, or vacation is in green. But this is how we would specify her calendar. Now this is one technique. The other technique is to show everything and to use a button to make the row visible. But anyway, so that's what the form does. So that we want to quickly kind of set context on what the form does. Now, when we're talking about performance, all of these techniques, using Chrome or Firefox, filtering on load, and and so on, all of these techniques will help. So let's go through these one by one. So first off, if your form is loading a lot of information when it opens, and that information is perhaps not exactly what the form needs. For example, if you're pulling in data from a list, that list could be large. It could be, let's say you have a large list, 1,000 different items, but the form only needs to pull in maybe 5 or 10 different rows, not all of them. So depending on what department the person's in, you don't want to pull in all of the rows from the list. You only want to pull in 5 or 10. Well, in that case, you don't want to query everything because that's going to make it slow. Here on the left, you see in the screenshot that we're querying employee info, and we're pulling in all that information. It would be much better if we only need the information for the existing employee. It would be much better to actually use the username and filter it. And here we're doing it on the right. So we've actually set the email query value. So typically these values will exist in your secondary data source when you have the form open. And I think it's this one here. On load, here's your secondary data sources on the right here, right? And so let's say we look at, I don't know which one you want to look at. You want to look at employee information. Is that the right one?
Yeah.
Okay, so underneath query fields, you can see that we have the email here. So by setting that value, and I believe Mel's doing it when she clicks out of the ID field, so let's take a look at that. So what we're doing here is we're actually setting that query field's value before we query it. So the key thing here is you want to make sure that your data connection is not set to query on load. And to figure that out, you're going to go to your data connections in the designer and look at this, select the data connection. And down here, if it loads on open, you'll see data retrieved every time the form is opened right there. But you don't want that for large data sources or for anything that you don't need on load. So in this case, we've moved the employee information query off of the load, and we're actually querying it when they click out of the ID number. When they type in their ID number and they tab out, it's going to query that field. But before we do that query, we're setting these two values, and that's going to reduce the amount of data that we query into the form, right? So that's the first technique. The first technique is to set your filters before you query. Make sure that your data connections don't load on open. Now make sure that you set this field's value before you do the query. If you query it and then set the field's value, it doesn't do much good, right? Because the order here is very important. So the second technique, and if you have any questions while we're talking, feel free to throw those in the chat window. We will be answering questions throughout the webinar and also at the end, and we do expect this to go another 20 minutes or so today. We've got a lot of demos. So the second technique, as we saw when we loaded the form, actually what I want to show next is I want to show the form, I believe I want to go to IE. We're going to show the form in IE. There's a couple of things I want to show here. But the second technique is all about hiding and not displaying everything at one time. So we have a config form. Now the config form is what we just showed here. The config form actually sets up the calendar, I believe. One of the things it does, it sets up the calendar. It also sets up the lookup values. But what we're going to talk about here is the calendar, because the calendar is 52 weeks. And so we have 52 rows. And so I want to ask everyone quickly, think about the form that you have that has the biggest table. And how many rows does that table have? And how many columns does that table have? So in this case, with the config form, we've got 52 rows, and we've got 5 columns for each day of the week. We're not counting Saturday and Sunday. So that's 5 times 52. That's 260 different cells. So we would be in that second category. You want to multiply the number of columns times the number of rows, and I know there's some simple math here, but this is really the calculation that you want to do. If you've got a large table, this technique is really, there's two techniques here. There's a part A and a part B. They're really going to help you significantly, and it looks like some of you actually even have more than 2,000 cells. That's great. We have about half voted, and we got about 38% with 100 cells or less, and now it's 44. And we got 22 of you that are in the largest category, more than 2,000 cells, and then about 22% also in the 500 cells. Okay, so that gives us an idea. There's definitely some people out there with large tables. So in this case, our table is in the second category. And let's just open this up. Let's see if I can open it up in the one that does not have any changes. So Mel, where did I go to get that? I need to go back to Forms Viewer here. We've got all the forms opening in Forms Viewer here. So I'm going to, yeah, so which one is the one that is before both of these techniques?
Show all repeating group.
Okay, so, and this stuff will work fine in InfoPath Form Services too with the Sandbox. So we're going to open up, where am I here?
Scroll down some
show all repeating, is that it?
Yeah.
So before we make any changes to this table, here's a config form, and one thing we're doing is we're not loading the calendar on load, we're postponing it. Now, so there's our 260 row cells, right? Now, what we want to do is we want to set up the calendar for the next school year. So we want to say, look, we're going to allow this to be a vacation. And as I click on this, you can see that this is a nice technique. It just toggles through the different settings. I believe we get back to blank. So if we hit once, it's non-contract, and then it's IN, whatever that means, and then it's V for vacation. So, but you can see there's a noticeable delay. It's like a second, right? Which is not good. Now, if we take a look at this in Chrome, one thing about Chrome is it's just so much faster that sometimes these problems just go away. Now, I don't know if Chrome is an option for you, but if it is, you should definitely look at it. So here is the same form in Chrome, And I'm just going to do the same thing we did. And we'll just take a look at this. Now watch what happens when I click on it. It's noticeably faster, right? So in this case, I wouldn't have to do anything with this form. It's fast enough for people, right? It's not, you really want it to be less than, I don't know, 4/10 of a second, or even 2/10 of a second when they are actually clicking throughout the form. Now this is a table that is a bit simplified because really we talked about rows and columns, 260 cells, right? But really it's actually, there's one more dimension to it, and that is if you have drop-downs. If you have tables with drop-downs, you have to multiply it by the number of items in the drop-down, and that's going to be the number of window controls that is trying to display at one time, which if you've got drop-downs, and we have customers that have large tables with drop-downs, it is just horrendous. So these two techniques may not make a huge difference in Chrome. They do in IE, and you'll see that in a second, but they absolutely make a difference if you've got more than 1,000 cells, and that means the columns, the rows times the columns times the number of items in any drop-downs that you would have in those cells. So let's take a look at these different techniques now. I'm going to open up, so I've already got the first technique is not to show everything. So what we've done here is we've actually changed the form to only show 4 different rows here for the month. And you can see here, we can page through it. Mel, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say it's per month.
It's per month, thanks. So you can see here it's much faster in IE to click on these buttons when we're paging it. And you can tell why. Obviously, it's because we're not displaying everything, right? We're just displaying, we're displaying a 10th or a 12th of the number of cells. So if we go into this, let's take a look at this in the designer. I'm just going to download this version, and I believe this is this one right now.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm just going to download this and show you what this looks like in the designer and show you how we did it basically. And we have the slide on this as well, but the technique is using conditional formatting. So what you're going to do is you're going to select, actually Mel, do you want to talk them through this? Let me just open it.
Yeah.
Since you did all this great work, I'm just demoing all the work you did.
That's right. We've got some form logic node there that is setting the current month. So that just shows controls the visibility. If the current row isn't the data in that row isn't the current month, right? So we're doing substring because in date XML formats, it's going to be the substring, the 2 digits in the middle, right? That's the month. So if the date is not equal to the month we're currently viewing, then we're hiding those.
Cool. That's pretty simple. And then the other technique, so any questions on that, please let us know. We're going to quickly switch to the next technique now, and I believe that is the technique where we show everything, but we are only editing 1 row at a time. So let's open up that form. This is going to be the
edit per row.
Thank you. Now this technique actually I like a little bit better because it gives people the ability to see everything. You know, when they're restricted to, and usually we wouldn't do paging based on 5 or so rows. We would want to do paging based on like maybe 25 or 50 or 100. Mel chose a month because it kind of makes sense given this solution. But normally you're going to want to display, you want people to be able to edit the form quickly. So you're going to want to display a lot of data. Now here we've got all 500 and all 260 cells displayed, but they can't click on it until they've clicked on the edit button. And now you can see that we've got everything displayed, and it is faster than displaying everything and letting them click on every single button. When we click on a new row, it's going to make that row the current selection, right? And so on. So this is a clever technique. This works really well with drop-downs. You basically need to keep a counter to determine which row you're currently on. In fact, let's take a look at this one. I'll have you say a few words about this too. I'm just going to download this one as well and show people what this looks like.
Yeah, this time we're setting another like a logic field that's gonna control where your current row, what row you're currently editing. And then we've got a picture button. It's a pencil icon to set that current row.
Okay, so there's our pencil, and in the designer, once again, like Mel just said, she's just setting the current row, and then we have a formatting row. I believe we have these two sections here, and then based on what current row it is.
It's in the container. Mm-hmm.
Where is it?
Oh no, sorry. It's in the top control is the button, and the bottom is the calculated value.
Oh, I see. So you're just doing it by the control. Okay. So if this is not the current row, then we hide the button, and we're displaying this if it is the current row. Okay. So I think that's which one of them is the button, right? Oh, if it is the current row, it hides the calculated value. So we have these calculated values here, and the calculated values are probably the fastest control in info path. So if you've got data, display it with the calculated value. The calculated value is just static information. You can't edit it, but it makes for a very fast display. So what you'll do here for large tables is you'll add either the controls separately. So you'll have one control for a button or one control for a text box and one control for your calculated value. And then you can show them. Now the other way to do that is to put them in different sections and put the rule for hiding and showing it within the section. So if you have multiple controls in the same column, you can do that. So that's the second technique in part 2. Any questions on that? Okay, moving right along. Okay, so we have a slide for these as well, and we're kind of just explaining this whole technique on paging in the slides, and then we've got this second slide just to remind us to show you that second technique, which is the pencil icon. We don't have images for this, but I'll try to add them before we send you the package at the end of the webinar today. And Mel, if you've got a couple images in the meantime, I need to fill up a slide. Okay, so technique number 3. Technique number 3 is when you have these large tables, don't use default values. So what's a default value? So a default value is like, let's say, where are we here? So these are all in the secondary data source. And if we look at what these controls are pointing at, they're pointing at these events here in the calendar. So, and this is kind of probably not, let me look at the other example here because it's probably better to show you this one. So this is the same, this is the, not the config form. So we were showing the config form setting up the calendar, and this form actually loads the calendar in for the current fiscal year, the current calendar year. And here you can see that we do have a repeating section, calendar day, and we have this week hour thing. Now you can add a default value, right? So you could put in here, well, we're going to calculate this automatically using a function. The problem with this is that it always calculates, so it's very compute intensive. What that means is that whenever you change something, it's going to cascade through your whole table, and it's going to try to recalculate everything, kind of like a spreadsheet in Excel recalculates everything, except in InfoPath it's very slow. So you don't want to use default values if you've got a table. What you want to do instead is you want to use rules, and I think we have an example in the image here. Basically what we're doing is we're saying, look, don't do the default values, as you can see on the left here. You can see that we're automatically numbering every row based on the previous row by using that preceding sibling rule with +1 at the end. Count preceding sibling +1. This is a very common pattern for counting, and just assigning 1, 2, 3, 4. It automatically assigns the number of the row to the week number there. Well, we don't want to do that because it's very slow. In this case, also it's static. We just do it once. So a better technique is to use this copy table command that you can see on the right here. Mel has is showing you a queries command that automatically copies data to all those. But in general, it doesn't have to be this command. You could just set a rule and have 52 rules or whatever it is to set each value. And you could also trigger a rule to run by setting a column in the table and then automatically calculating it for each one. And that the benefit of the rule is it's only going to run on the condition, or it's only going to run when you trigger it, which could be on load or on a button press. So definitely the rules are going to be a lot faster when dealing with tables than default values. Mel, we don't have an actual demo for that, do we?
Oh, no, we don't.
Okay, so if you get questions on that, let us know. We can come up with a demo later. The technique number 4 is to delay data connections on load. We already showed this a little bit with the set dates. I think I went to, when I was in Chrome earlier, you saw, let me just go back here. So when I filled out this form, I actually clicked on get config and then set dates. And the benefit of lazy loading or delay loading this data information, secondary data source, the benefit is, number 1, user perception. So if your users are opening the form, first impression counts. And the first impression is how fast does the form load. So let's take a look at that again. So our form that we're going to, the end-all be-all, right, is this form here. And these can be in a library too. We just have them listed here for demo purposes. But you can see that this takes less than, it's in that 3-second range. It might even be faster with Chrome. But that's a nice experience, right? And this is, of course, across the cloud. This is 365, right? So we really want to quickly display something to the users. And then, okay, I'm in the right place, great. Need to fill out the calendars for my people. And then they know that they need to click get config and set dates and type in their name and all that. Now, obviously, I need to type in the name again. 10, was it 843 now?
0483.
There's nobody with that one. So
another example is on form open, the drop-downs don't have options. You're going to have to get config to populate the drop-downs with options.
Great. So once we've gotten the config, though, that data loads in, and you can see Mel's calendar here. Now, in this case, if we're in Chrome, I would say we should probably display everything because it's pretty fast in Chrome. But you can see here, you can type in the number of hours they're off or whatever it is, and they can set their calendar. They can also put in information like if they're on vacation or whatever. And if they're on vacation, they would have the number of hours on vacation. So you can see how this works when you're setting up a calendar for an employee for the school year. But the key technique here is to lazy load your data connections. And once again, what you're going to do is you're going to go into your form in the designer, and you're going to make sure that that data connection, the config form one here, is not loading on open. So make sure that unlike months, which is set to every time the form is open, and Mel, actually that might be a bug. We might want to remove that to make it even faster because it's in the config, right? But for this config form, we're definitely not loading it until they click that button. So you want to make sure that all of your data connections are set to not load unless you absolutely need them. Lazy loading them will reduce the amount of time it takes to open the form, right? So that's the technique. That's technique number 4. And this is wonderful because it quickly shows them the form, they're happy. And then if they have to click a button to get the data and it takes a few more seconds, it's not a big deal. But they've got that first impression, right? And that's what's really important here. So finally, I'd like to talk about one more technique here, and I think this might be the last technique. Oops, not quite. There's 2 more techniques, but they're kind of related. Number 1 is if your form is loading, let's say more than 5 data connections, and in our form, we have more than 5 data connections. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, the last one is a submit, so that's not a query. But we have 8 data connections, and this one actually is pointing to the QRL stuff, so we could ignore that one as well. But we've got 7 different data connections here on load. And we definitely don't want to load everything on load because we pay some overhead. So there's a little bit of overhead for each data connection. Now, this technique may not work for everyone, but if you've got a whole bunch of lists, and they're all kind of containing config information, You could create one meta list and query that. Same thing is true for database query. You could change the query to include multiple tables, right? And pull everything in on that one query. So your data structure is going to be either larger or more complex, but you're only doing one query. And that means you're only paying the overhead tax once. So this is a technique that may not work for you because you may not be able to consolidate those different lists and data tables. But if you can, actually with the database case, it's really easy. But with the lists, sometimes maybe not so much because you want people to edit them separately. But if you can consolidate them in one list or one view, then it's much faster because you're only querying once. You're only paying the overhead tax once. So that's the fifth technique. And if we take that a little bit further, what we're going to do here is we're going to reduce the number of data connections into one. So what we've done here in technique number 6 is we're taking all of these different data connections, supervisors, positions, locations, and departments, actions, and days. Those 6 data connections are all getting rolled up into the config form. And the config form is what we showed originally. We're actually putting all that configuration data in a separate form that we load when the form opens. And the benefit is that if your data doesn't change very often, which it doesn't for these 6 data connections, then you don't have to pay the tax at all. In fact, you can even go further and you can take that config data and you can put it in your info path form template. And that's what we've done here in this, let me just show you the, if you look at this config form here, this is actually a resource file, I believe. I guess it isn't, but it's it is baked into the form as an XML file. You can see it right there. It is not loading the form. Mel is loading it from the web service. I guess it is loading it from the SharePoint site, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. Because sometimes it might change.
So Mel hasn't even done that even more, what's the word, extreme performance tuning. She's left it in the SharePoint site, which makes it easier to edit, right? But you could bake it into your form by just adding a resource file and then including it in the form, in which case it doesn't even query. The form, the XML data, the config data is just there when your form opens. Now let's take a look at what the before and after here. I think what I'm going to do is look at Chrome because I'm kind of lazy and Chrome is super fast. So which one, Mel, should I click on? I forget. I've got links in my presentation. I should just do that. I should look at those. Oops, too far. So we're going to go to the links. Just give me 1 second while I get the bad link. And that's IE. This is going to take a long time to load, even with Chrome. So we're just going to open this form, the previous form with all the data connections, and we're just going to wait, for maybe, I don't know, 5, 10, 20 seconds. This form is querying all those data connections on load, and you can see it's taking quite a long time. And eventually, if we wait long enough, I don't know, Mel, when you timed it, were you timing it in Chrome or were you timing it in IE?
In IE.
Okay, you can see it finally loaded, but it probably took 20 plus seconds. In IE, it took 80 or 90 seconds. So that's loading everything on load, and when we do that, of course, we have everything. We don't need to, we've got everything, we're all set, right? And I guess I need to type in the address again, and then it's going to pull in all of her information, because we do pull in some employee information, and then if we want to set the dates using this approach, now I forget how we do that, but
no, this one doesn't have the color coding yet.
That's cool. But let's take a look at the one. We're just showing that technique of loading things in a config file. So we have another link here where we have everything loading via the config. I think I've already showed you that once, but let's just take a look at this again in Chrome, apples to apples, right? So you just saw about a 20-second load time. This one is taking, about 3 or 4 seconds, less than 5 seconds. So, and the reason why is because we consolidated the config, we moved it into an XML file, and this is just a much better experience. And I think you can all agree, yay, that this works. And I want to thank Mel for these wonderful demos. We don't know what we do without you, Mel.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff here. So we've talked about a lot of different techniques today, and we're going to send you the slide deck. We're going to send you the video link. But I also wanted to quickly ask folks, if you had a question on these techniques, I'll fill in some screenshots for that part 2B. Let's just throw this question out to the crowd. Do we have any questions on these techniques today? And these techniques, like I said, will work with the filler or the InfoPath Forms Services browser, also with FormsViewer because FormsViewer works with your InfoPath Forms. So these techniques are what we use, and you can see that they're very effective, right? So we've gone from forms that take 20 plus seconds to load down to 3 to 5 seconds, which is the sweet spot when you're dealing with cloud-based services. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. That's kind of boring. Someone should ask us a question just to show us that they're still here. We will be packaging this stuff up. We've got a short 5-question survey at the end with the wild question at the end that you're all looking forward to, right? We're going to be talking about DBXL 3.2 next week. For those of you who don't know what DBXL is our database accelerator, so it helps you connect your forms to a SQL database. You can extract all of your data from your InfoPath forms and repurpose it in some other solution using this. You can also use it to query data from a database into your forms. So DBXL 3.2 is on the verge of being released next month. It probably won't hit the download site until the end of the month, but we are going to preview it and talk about the new things we've done with it. And Donald has a question for everyone. Are we from Mars? Yes, we're definitely from Mars. Melly, you might be from Venus, but I'm from Mars. And it took a long time to get here. And my brain, of course, I've had some brain damage, Donald, because of that trip. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for coming to the webinar this week. We look forward to having you here next week. And if you have any questions or comments, or you have any things you want to see, please don't hesitate to let us know. We've got that quick survey coming up. We'll get the package out to you and talk to you later. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. Have a good day.